Hi, this is Chris and welcome to The Compulsive Hobbyist. As the channel name suggests, this is generally a hobby channel, but this is not a hobby video. This is a repair video, which I suppose I could put on a channel called The Compulsive Repairman, but that doesn't quite roll off the tongue, so we'll just leave it where it is for now. This is really a matter of necessity. Needless to say, working on a car on my weekend is not the way I would spend my hobby time. This isn't a hobby car. This is my wife's, daily driver. But sometimes these things come up, sometimes through no fault of anyone's, and sometimes through the fault of the Bavarian engineers who, quite frankly, cut a corner where maybe they shouldn't have, and it came back to bite them and me. If you own an F22 BMW, you very likely have run into this, or if not, you will run into it, and that is taillight failure. This is actually the second time for this car that I've had to replace one of these taillights. About a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, I replaced the right side tail lamp assembly. And at the time, I thought about making a video of it, if only for my own reference in case I needed to do it again. But I decided not to because I saw there were a couple other videos up on YouTube already that looked like they were fairly detailed. But as it turns out, once I got into it and was reviewing those videos, I realized that they didn't really cover the whole process. So I figured if this comes up again sometime down the road, I'll document it. As it turns out, it came up rather quickly. Several weeks later, the left side taillight is gone out. When I say they go out intermittently. Sometimes they're functioning, sometimes they drop out. The BMW electronics do give you a warning up on the dashboard with various errors. This being my second repair, I think it's going to go fairly quickly. But I do have to say that this process is not well documented, at least as far as I've been able to find. I don't have the service manual, so I'm probably missing some actual BMW documentation. So having said that, what you'll see me do here is probably not going to be the technically perfect way to do it. And I won't be surprised if I get some comments for people saying, hey, you should have done this differently, or you did that wrong. What I will say is that my repair for the right side lamp has held up for about 6 weeks now. And while that is not what I would consider to be a particularly impressive milestone, it is at least functioning. So if I need to go back and recrimp or heat shrink anything after the fact, I'll do it. And I will post a follow-up video letting you know if I had to do that. But fingers crossed, I think my somewhat shade tree mechanic techniques here, I think are going to serve me just fine, given that this is really a pretty straightforward repair. So before I jump into this, these replacement parts, I will put the part numbers for both sides, the left and right side, in the comments. These parts cost me a combined $103.88 US shipped. And I ordered these from ECS Tuning. I've had pretty good luck with them. There are certainly other places online where you can get them. And it's really two different parts here. It is the F22 taillight bulb holder, either left or right. And it is the F22 taillight repair cable. That's not model or generation specific. And this is more than just a cable. There's multiple parts in there, which I'll show you. While I normally do not care for unboxing videos, I figure since I'm opening it, I may as well show the process. And this here is the additional component which was added after the fact to mitigate the design flaw. which I'll show you on the original unit. And the wiring repair kit includes this additional ground wire with a plug, a socket, replacement socket, and the replacement pins and sleeves. So the first step is just to open up these two hinged covers and remove these two bolts so that we can loosen up this tail lamp unit. And this is a 10 millimeter nut. The next step, which is a little tricky, and I had a little bit of a challenge getting it off on this side, is you've got to pull it loose. Now, it's no longer really secured, but you can't just wrench it out from this side because it's going to pivot on the left side. You've got to be able to pull it out on the front and back. So to assist with tail lamp removal, I'm going to use this plastic wedge to hopefully minimize the risk of any scratching on the paint. You really just need to use something like this as a wedge. You don't need to use a lot of force. You don't need to pry. All you need to do is just apply a little bit of pressure so that when you're pulling from the right side, it's going to kind of force the left side forward a little bit and the whole thing can move out. Because there's nothing really holding it in once you've removed those two bolts. So to get the old plug off, there's a plastic pin that I ended up breaking off, which doesn't matter because it's sacrificial. This whole unit's going to come loose here. And it's the tail lamp mounting assembly here is secured into the exterior tail lamp assembly with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tabs. And it can be a pain to do this, 7 tabs. And it can be a pain to do this single-handedly because you've got to just kind of work your way around it and get it loose enough that the clips will be over the tabs enough that you can get it loose, which is not, it's easier said than done. So there are probably some techniques that will make it easier. Most likely having an extra set of hands present is your best bet. Yeah, it's cold outside and my skin's a little on the sensitive side right now. So there's no real trick to that other than working my way around and very gently prying with a screwdriver. Gently being the key word here. You're trying not to break anything. You're just trying to kind of work it loose from these 7 tabs. So now I'm going to set aside the actual tail lamp assembly here so as not to scuff up the plastic. And I'm going to take a couple pictures for illustration purposes of the actual problem here. What I'm trying to show here is that one of the pins, the ground pin, is blackened and charred. You can see around the outside of it there is some very clear sort of almost looks like melting. Certainly scoring. Carbon sort of, it's burnt. And when I look at, there's nothing to see on the other side here. And when I look at the cable itself, there we go. You can clearly see there's some melting going on there. And the pin itself looks to have been burned or melted back. It's there, but it's kind of out of position and maybe bent. So it had intermittent contact, which is exactly what I saw on the other side. What is different between the old and the new? The old unit, that ground wire was the only ground connection for the entire lighting system. While this new one has two connections. One is the same pin, but the second one is this unit here, and they're connected. If you look at the inside here, now we have this additional unit here, which connects into the ground system. Yeah, so that connects into a circuit that runs around the outside and then connects back into that second pin. So that little pin there was simply insufficient to handle the current, and over time it just burns out. So that is a design deficiency on the part of the Bavarian Motor Works. Nice job, guys. Good work, Munich. So now I'm just going to go through and replace each of the bulbs. This is just a kind of a push and twist incandescent set of bulbs. No real desire here to replace this with LEDs or OLEDs or anything else. Plain old functional bulbs are really all I'm looking for here. So that part of the job, the swapping out the actual bulbs and the assembly itself is very straightforward. The a little bit more time-consuming and tedious part here is swapping out the harness. So we really have two choices with this because this is fried. We could cut this because the replacement gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these replacement pins for this 8-wire connector. And there's a reason for that. The 8th wire is right here, and this is going to connect in to our augmented ground wire connection. So we got 7 of these. We've got a little crimper here for our ground wire. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There should be a 7th one here, yeah. We got 7 of these. And really all we need to do here is we need to either cut and re-crimp each of these wires and reassemble them into here. The other option is we can pull these out one at a time and salvage, if we can do it carefully, we can salvage the pin because these do pop out. I was able to do that on the other side and save myself some rewiring and re-crimping. Is that the best way to do it? I'm not sure, but I'm going to try it the quick way and see if that works for me the second time around. If not, we'll do it the long way because I've got my wire stripping tool here, and we'll see which way we can go with it. So what we're going to do here is to get this thing off, if we're not going to cut it off, then what we can do is, I can't show you from this angle because I only have two hands, but we can pop this little latch. There's a latch on the upper side and the lower side. We're going to pop that open with a screwdriver, which will free up the inner ends of these pins and then allow me to pull them out. So I'll run into a very minor snag here. This end, the end that wasn't next to the fried ground wire, just open right up the way it's supposed to. It just pops right open and allows access to the pins, which will allow me to pull these pins out. The other side, however, the side that happened to be melted, you see how that's melted? Well, it's melted to this little flap. So I'm trying to pry it loose, but I suspect, yeah, that whole flap is broken, which doesn't really matter because my replacement here has both of those flaps intact. So the real question is, am I going to be able to pull these wires out, excluding the brown ground wire, which I'm going to have to cut because that is just fused in there, I think. I don't think I'm going to be able to get that out, and that's okay. And one last view here, I was able to get the plastic cover off, and yep, that really fused on there. That is some melted plastic. Again, it's just a fantastic job on the part of BMW there. All right. Just taking a couple of pictures here so I can remember where the wires were. I did find a post on a forum that shows the wiring diagram, which I'll link to in the description. But I always like to have a photograph, just, you know, as a sanity check. All right, so when I pulled these out, as I suspected, I did some damage to the wires. So I am actually going to just cut these wires and then crimp them with the new pins and the new sleeves. So it's a little bit more work, but I think it's the right way to do it. Alternatively, I could just, I could probably get by just fine with wrapping these and reusing them, but let's do this the right way. So I couldn't really show it while I was doing it because I didn't have a hand free, but what we've got here is, on the lower part here, we've got the new ground pin that's going to go into that 8-pin plug. And then we've got the new additional ground connector. The ground connector has 2 wires. So one of the wires from the pin that will go into the plug, I spliced together or wrapped together with the other wire and then crimped it all into this this crimp here. This second end will be wrapped and crimped with this wire here. And that's it. And that's the completed crimp there. So we really have 4 ground wires coming together in the end, going back out into the vehicle, really on this one wire. Presumably this wire itself is capable, it's rated to handle the current. It was really this pin there that was the problem, I'm gathering. because all of this additional connectivity here is really all going to be flowing through this one wire. So I'm trusting that the guys in Bavaria have done it right this time. We'll see. So I'm going to wrap this with electrical tape, and then we've got this added piece of heat shrink tubing that we'll use later on. So this is the result. I guess I went to the school of overkill in that I've got electrical tape and heat shrinking and more electrical tape. For these little connectors here, I'm just going to show this one in detail. I really couldn't show you a close-up, and it's certainly not going to come through in the my external camera here. But basically what you're doing is you got this this rubber sleeve, and then you've got to crimp it down in two places. You got the side crimp that you squeeze together with your wire cutters, and then you've got these little arms that kind of crimp over the rubber sleeve. It's a little bit of a pain. I suspect there might be a special tool to kind of crimp these little arms down, or maybe you just need some really tiny needle nose pliers. But the end result seems to be pretty tough, so I'm just going to do this for all of them. So these are not adding a whole lot of extra time, but it gives me some peace of mind, because if I tried to reuse the old pins, let's see if I can find an example. Here's one of the old pins, and you know, here's where we can see that I cut these wires a little too long. The original factory ones were a lot shorter, and they're crimped better. So whatever they used in the factory to crimp these, they used a tool. They used the correct tool. And I'm kind of winging it by using hand tools here. So this is where my shade tree job is a little not... There's probably a long German word to explain the job that I'm doing. Or maybe there's a short German word. Maybe it's something like Scheiße. But I think it's good enough. We'll find out. You know, worst case, if one of these starts to flake out on me again, if I have to pull this apart and recrimp any of this or redo any of this, worst case, I'm out a little bit of money for some of these replacement crimps, or whatever they're called, pins. You know, obviously I don't have to replace the entire assembly for that, but I don't think it's going to come to that. But other than not using the right crimping tools and maybe not quite having the wire trimmed to the correct length, I think we're not far from where we need to be. And if any of y'all know what the right tool is for this job, please let me know in the comments, because okay, here's an example of a job gone wrong. So the wire slipped out of the crimped pin, so now I have to straighten this out enough that I can crimp it back in. Yeah, this is where I'm a little unhappy with this process, because clearly I'm not using the right tool here, because I ended up having to I have to uncrimp this, straighten it all back out, put the wire back in, try to recrimp it, and of course each time I crimp this thing I'm probably losing some strength in it. It's bending the metal, and this is fairly thin metal here, so this really is not supposed to be done multiple times. Of that I'm certain. All right, lastly, I need to reassemble all this. I need to put this back in, put these pins in the right order, and I'm referring back to my photographs that I took. And really all you need to do here is push it in until you hear a little click, and it's in all the way. The other problem I'm dealing with is my hands are getting cold. It's winter time. Of course, these both failed when it's cold out. And even though I'm working in a garage, it's not heated. I'm exposed, and my hands are definitely uncomfortable. This doesn't really need much force. You're just kind of clipping these plastic clips in place. And that's not crimping anything, it's just mechanically holding the pins in place to keep them from pulling out. And that's it. This is wired up now. So now I am simply going to plug this together. Plug that in, and then it clips into place. And then this thing here, I'm not sure what to make of this. This looks like it's supposed to clip over one of these wires. I don't know that I really trust running any of these wires through this thing. So, you know, given that there's no instructions that comes with it, I'm actually just going to tuck it out of the way and use a little extra electrical tape to just try to bundle it a little bit. Okay, so I'm back for an unexpected part 2 of this BMW repair video. As you saw in the previous part, I thought I had this fixed. But as I think you may have noticed on the footage of my testing the brake lights, while they do work now, which is a definite step up, the brakes, the directionals work. When I test drove the car after the video, I saw that I was still getting an error, that there's an issue with the brake on the left side. I'm hoping that I can avoid having to take all of the wires out, because while it is possible to do so, I'm likely to damage the wires in doing so, and I kind of wanted to avoid that. You really have to use some force to pull the wires out. You know, you can do it using a tool, but then you're really crimping and potentially breaking the wiring itself. Not to mention stripping some of the plastic off, and then you have to tape it up, which I want to avoid because I think electrical tape is going to break down over time in the weather conditions that a car is exposed to. And speaking of weather conditions, it looks like my camera is blowing around, so apologies for the conditions. I don't have my lighting, my tripod, or my mic for this part of the video. I'm just trying to get this done quickly before I have to get off to my next time commitment. So, and rushing is usually where these types of jobs go wrong. I think that's kind of where the first job went wrong, because I was really trying to meet a timing deadline. So anyways, let's see how this goes. Maybe you'll get a better view of using this plastic wedge to get this. See? Doesn't really require much force, just a little bit of a wedge. All right. So what it looks like I did is I was following the photographs I took of the connector, but I had the connector swapped. So I believe my wiring was correct in following these pictures, except I've got the whole connector actually reversed. So I am amazed, I am really amazed that the lights were working as well as they did. The brake lights were working. The tail lights were working. The blinkers were working, and I believe the reverse lights were working. I'm pretty sure I checked that, but okay. Now I'm not 100% sure, but I know the brake lights were working and the directionals. So I've identified the source of my mistake. And now I've got to undo and then redo this and patch up any damage that I do to the wires in the process. And look, part of the theme of this channel is I don't claim to be an expert in anything I do. I make it a point to say that going into this. So, and I also make mistakes. I learn from the mistakes. And my main takeaway from this, having seen what the mistake was that I probably should have been more careful about, or more mindful about the work I was doing, and less mindful about the side work of camera angles and lighting and sound and presenting this video. But also, I was rushed for time. I was trying to make a deadline. It took longer than I expected, which is usual for these types of jobs, for me anyways. And I was uncomfortable. It was cold, it was windy even in the garage. My hands were getting numb. I was getting cuts on my hands. You know, the usual stuff that comes with any sort of mechanical type work. Which is not a recipe for success. All right, so the first one came out and the pin just came loose. That might be a theme here. Second one, pin came loose. Third one, pin came loose. So in the first video, I was complaining about the crimping on these pins. This DIY without a proper crimper, clearly not the right way to go about this, because now I have to recrimp all these. First, I have to figure out how to get the pins out, and then I have to recrimp them. In hindsight, I should not have pulled the pins off. I should have just reused the existing pins. Out of those 8 wires, only 2 of the pins stayed on, and one of them was the ground wire, which came pre-crimped from the factory. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to now push the pins out. Okay, so I don't think I got all of the video that I thought I got because my GoPro stopped filming partway through. So far, my experience with my GoPro 8 is kind of a love-hate thing, but I'll save that for another video. I'm sitting here trying to wrap this up, not knowing how much footage I actually got of this, but I'll sum it up. The bottom line is, when I took this apart, I realized that I had inserted the 8 wires in reverse. So 4 and 4, they were like this in relation to the sockets. So I had carefully followed the photographs that I had taken before I disassembled it, and I put them back in visually in the right order, but they were switched in relation to the actual plug. So what's mind-blowing to me is the fact that it worked at all. But once I took it all apart, figured out my mistake, and put it back together again correctly this time, it's all working. I just did a test run. Everything's good now. The problem I have now is that in disassembling it, again, I'm not sure if that showed up in the previous video. In disassembling it, when I pulled the wires out, I literally was pulling the wires out by hand from the pins. The pins stayed in and the wire came loose, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. The factory pins, when I first disassembled it, they required a good amount of force to pull them out of the plug. And I actually had to use pliers, use a fair amount of force to pull it loose, and in no cases did the wire come loose from the pin. The factory crimping, which I don't have a photo of, but the factory crimping was really good, really tight. They obviously used some specialized machinery to crimp that thing down. Whereas I don't have it with me, but my homemade repair was with just a wire stripping wire stripping tool with a little crimper at the end. And I did the best job I could at crimping it down with that tool, but it just wasn't good enough. So I am actually considering buying one or maybe two more of the wire repair kits, which aren't that expensive, because I did repair this side as well, and just redoing this job, because each time I do this, it gets quicker. But before I do that, I really need to figure out, well, what's the right way to crimp those pins down? Because obviously doing it with my hand, my $20 wire stripping and crimping tool from Home Depot, that's not the right tool. So I do need to do some research and figure out, well, what's the right tool, what's the right technique? Because in my initial searching for information on this repair job, I did find several YouTube videos. And unless I'm missing something, none of them actually went into detail on the crimping. I could be wrong about that, and I am going to go re-review it. If I find a video that shows how to do the crimping correctly, I will link to it. If I do not, then I'll figure out what the right tool is, buy another repair kit, redo this job, and film just a quick update video showing the crimping process, because that's the piece I really was missing. Besides my bonehead reassembly mistake, that to me is something that I still don't have an answer to. What's the right way to do it? And realistically, I mean, is that going to cause me problems? Probably not, because really there's no tension on those wires, or there shouldn't be. It's just resting inside this enclosure in what should be a weatherproof condition, and as long as there's nothing really pulling on those wires, the crappy crimp job that I have is going to be fine. But I know that it's not done right now, so that's going to be nagging at me. So we'll see. When I have more to update, I will post a follow-up and link it here. Otherwise, I hope my experience with this job doesn't, if you're looking to do this job, doesn't scare you off from doing it. It's definitely doable. I mean, I've done both of these now. Clearly, I'm not an expert, and they're working. And I expect they're going to keep working for the foreseeable future. But just be aware that it's maybe not quite as straightforward as some of the other videos show it up to be. But it's doable. So just be prepared, give yourself plenty of time, triple check the wiring diagrams before you reassemble it, and just be very careful with the crimping, because it's not as simple as it might appear to be at the first glance. Anyways, good luck, and if you have other experience in doing this, feel free to add that to the comments, because hopefully somebody will get some value out of this, and if you have something to add, this is as good a place as any to do it. Anyways, wish you good luck, and hope to see you guys in a future video. Bye now.